In this demo, I'm going to be showing you how to complete a monochromatic portrait study. This can be used to kind of plan out your final project, or this can just be a study whenever you're working on portraits. The monochromatic form or technique really helps you to look at the shadows and the highlights in your portrait, and it will help you map out those values in your final piece. So right now I am just showing you how I would take a printed photo and then fold it in quarters, then recreate those quarters on my paper, and draw out my portrait before I begin painting. When drawing a portrait, I typically start with either the nose or the eye and then work out from that. It's just kind of a good point to anchor your portrait from. And you'll notice that I'm completing one quarter at a time before moving on to the next one. The main goal here is to get things placed in proportion and in scale, and then you can go back and edit as much as you need to get items exactly where they need to be. For this study, I'm only going to complete half of the face. And this works well if you have a printed copy of your photo, and your photo that is printed and what you're drawing or painting is about the same size. As you can see, I'm using it to kind of line up and edit again. I had those glasses in the wrong spot, so I'm going back in and redrawing those, and then just making some final touches before I start the painting process. when creating a monochromatic piece of artwork, it means that you're just using one color and then the tints and shades of that color. So I've chosen purple for this piece, and so you can choose to add a little bit of black to your watercolor paint to get your darkest values. And then because we're using watercolor, we're just gonna add more and more water to get the pigment more transparent and less opaque. So I'm gonna start here with just creating a little value scale right there on my study. And then I'm going to start with a wash. So I'm going from light to dark. I'm adding quite a bit of water there. I would recommend having a clean palette, not like the watercolor palette that I'm using. It's just one I picked up in the classroom. But start out going from your lightest values and then building up to your darkest. Make sure that as you're applying your wash of color that you have enough water in your paintbrush. You don't want to oversaturate your page, but you also don't want to end up with a really opaque layer of watercolor before you've added your darkest layers. So you can see I've started with my very light wash on the main part of the face, or the majority of the face, and now I'm going in with my medium tones. So I just have more pigment, a little bit less water, but it's still very fluid, and I'm moving that around. This is meant to be a little bit looser, not super tight painting whenever you're using watercolor. And I'm building up layers. If you're using the right consistency of water and paint, then your layers should be drying in enough time where you can start layering. If it's your paper is super saturated, then you will have to wait and let that dry before you can build your layers up. One thing that I want you to notice is that if I have a really opaque brush stroke or splotch of paint on my paper, then I can go back and just add a little bit of water to that, and it will spread out. This is just a 16 oval pan set of Prang watercolors. So it is a student grade, but it's a pretty good grade of watercolors. I enjoy using it, but this will work with Crayola, any type of watercolors that you're going to use in the classroom. you have your main color blocked in, then you're going to start going back and forth between your lighter and your darker shades. Don't be afraid to go dark. It's going to make a big difference in your paintings and in your drawings, even whenever you add those shadows, as long as you have the contrasting highlights. Just don't be afraid to go dark. Just start slowly and then build up your dark values.